Point number 7, sensing versus intuition. Sensing types. Sensors pay attention to their most immediate impressions, the raw data that they can see, hear, and touch. They create meaning out of concrete information and rely heavily on past experiences to guide their future behavior. People with this preference are practical and active. They like to live in the here and now. Sensors like concrete tasks and tend to pursue things in a linear sequence. At work, they will make an effort to understand expectations and like to use their proven skills to solve immediate problems. Sensors like to work on something with a clear result or product and experience the satisfaction with open-ended or overly abstract tasks. People with a sensing preference work well with details and are happy to dig into the nitty-gritty of a situation. They follow and communicate information in a step-by-step fashion, and they appreciate the value of realism and common sense. So again, this is just a foundational definition of sensing types. It does not define every sensing type on the planet and otherwise other galaxies and all that shenaz, alright? So moving on now to the other function, intuitive types. Intuitives pay attention to their intuition, instinct, and ability to draw meaning from seemingly disconnected facts. They are good at reading between the lines and recognizing connections between random groups of facts. People with this preference are abstract and theoretical. They worry about the future more than the present and plan to change the world rather than simply live in it. Really important point. Intuitives are interested in everything that is unusual and new and chafe at routine. Ideas inspire them, and they are more likely to focus on the theory than the practice of a project. They enjoy learning over doing and may get bored with repetitive projects that do not engage their creativity. Amen to that. Intuitives take a high-level view and may experience the satisfaction when attention to detail is required. People with an intuition preference doubt and test everything. They value innovation and imagination and present information in a roundabout way through leaps of association and figures of speech. Again, just the foundation of intuitives, not the end-all be-all, but just a good foundational definition. So what are you? Are you an intuitive or are you a sensing type? I'm an intuitive, and let me tell you something. Talking to sensing types throughout a good portion of my life has been very difficult because, I don't think in a linear sort of, okay, step one, let me do this. No, my mind goes all over the place at the speed of light because of inattentive ADHD, and I can bring facts and knowledge from anywhere and everywhere in a matter of seconds. And then the sensing type is like, wait, what? You did what with the, you did this with the, wait, that's not possible. It's like, dude, yeah, it is possible. So anyways, there's that constant clash of understanding and coming from a different perspective. So an unbalanced sensing type, a classic example of an unbalanced sensing type is someone who believes that it ain't Christmas if there ain't no snow. It's Christmas, it ain't snow. It's not Christmas for them unless the snow's outside. Or you're not really celebrating their birthday unless it's on the exact day of. Otherwise, you forgot it or it's not the same significance. Now, as an intuitive, I think it's a little malarkey. Planet Earth is at I believe, a 23.5 degree axis. So the day of your birthday is not even falling exactly on the day of your birthday. So technically speaking, and time is a social construct. It's not real. So I can just keep going down further and further and just disproving any solidifying sensing type fact of this discussion. So, that right there can arise in an argument with some people. And in a relationship where one partner is really intuitive and really thinks outside the box and sees a bigger perspective or more opportunities in some regard, an unbalanced sensing type is going to get upset, is going to just refuse to want to partake, or just not going to allow what the intuitive wants to happen. And then unfortunately, the other side of the coin, we might have an intuitive who is not really grounded in reality perhaps and thinks of these scenarios that are really unrealistic and don't have the potential to become a reality due to the implications of perhaps certain things, certain sensing function things that they're imbalanced with. Some, perhaps rules, established standards of certain places or things or actions that occur as a consequence. they're already established, it's a constant it's a constant battle. So in a relationship, this can all occur too. And you tie in rejection sensitive dysphoria in this regard, forget about it, man. It's really gonna get out of hand sometimes. Because we're going to feel like we're not being heard. One of the partners is going to feel like they're not being heard. And unfortunately, sometimes both of the partners might not feel like they're being heard. And boom, calamity, fighting, throwing stuff. The kids get traumatized. They get emotional. What's wrong with my parents? Why are they doing this? We need to learn to balance out our functions that are not balanced out. And that's what I try to talk about in the ADHD videos I made of cognitive functions. So in those videos, we talk about how the sensing function, being the second letter in cognitive functions, the sensing function being the second letter in cognitive functions, or intuition, both of those being the second letter, if those things aren't balanced out, it's going to be really hard to communicate. And if you don't know how to communicate to an intuitive, or if you don't know how to communicate to a sensing type, it's going to be really hard for you to get your point across. And in different situations and things in life, we have to be able to talk in a different capacity depending on what's needed. So we need to balance that part out of ourselves in order to lessen the conflict and the struggle. We need to understand where our partner is coming from, the mindset that they have, and we need to help them refine that and balance that out. They can do that for themselves too, but we can also help out a little bit by being considerate. And same thing with us. We got to balance out our own cognitive functions and see what we need to be improving on. And that way our partner can help us out too. And it can be a team effort, a family effort, and not this sort of, what the hell are you talking about? And you just walk out of the room and slam the door. No, we need to be able to talk about this. It's a different way of looking at life. It's just different perspectives and different functions. But I believe if we learn to talk to one another, we're going to see a lot of progress. Let's go to the next point. Number 8, being around the wrong people / places. Now, sometimes when you have ADHD, there's going to be certain places or people that perhaps you like to be around that you like to be around them because they might stimulate your reward system. You feel good being around them. It's a lively vibe. It's fun. You enjoy each other's company, or you enjoy going to this place for whatever reason. But sometimes some of the places we go to, some of the environments we're around, might not be the best for us because there might be some people there that are going to be gaslighting us and perhaps, unfortunately, sometimes even taking advantage, whether consciously or unconsciously, of our ADHD. And unfortunately, sometimes they might even have ADHD and might not be aware of it. In a lot of cultures, especially when ADHD is involved, there's a lot of resentment in people being able to rise up and become something in life and succeed. Because it makes the other people, those friends with this person, feel like, well, hey, how come that person could rise up and become somebody? How come I can't do that? So at that point, then the resentment comes in on, well, he can only, or she can only do that. He can only do that because they did this or that. If I would do that, I would certainly get that too. That resentment comes in. So we need to watch out for that. We should be happy for our friends and significant people in our life who are succeeding. And just because we're not doesn't mean we can't be happy for other people. I know it's a little tough because we want to succeed too. And that's why I'm making these videos, so we can work on different stuff about ourselves and tame the ADHD and get that sucker under control. And then incorporate some discipline and get that trauma worked with if you need to. I believe if we take care of ourselves, we take care of the ADHD, we take care of the brain, we take care of the heart, that's going to be good. Take care of the brain, take care of the heart. Yeah, we balance ourselves out. That's the goal. That's the aim, is to balance out your cognitive functions. So when we're around certain environments, we might be improving in this regard, but being around certain people and certain environments is not going to edify us sometimes. And it's going to make taking the proper steps forward to improve, it's going to make that really hard because we're going to keep falling back down. Because perhaps the people we're hanging around or places we're going to, we're spending more money that's in the budget, and perhaps that's making the ADHD impulse problems even harder. And you're like, I don't know how we lost all this money. It just kind of happened. It's like, yeah, you were in the moment. You were hyper focusing, having a good time. Impulsivity came out. Boom. That money just left. That money just left. So we need to be careful because of this. We need to be considerate of ourselves, and most of all, considerate of our ADHD. So we should have a balance, a healthy balance to what we do and where we go and how often we go to or do these things. I'm not telling you how to live your life, but trying to give you some advice on how to get the ADHD a bit more under control. So we need to watch out. There's some places where we go to where some people they get us in a very intense mood sometimes, and stuff can get really conflicted, and sometimes even amongst family members themselves. So we need to be considerate of ourselves in the ADHD and not put ourselves in harm's way, or not put ourselves in situations where there's a high likelihood that some trouble is going to ensue. I know life is unpredictable. We can't always keep that under control, but we can certainly be wise and be adaptive to the places and things that we do in order to take care of our relationship and take care of our ADHD. If you have an issue with this, I hope you guys can talk it out. Let's move on to the next point. Number 9, substance and or alcohol abuse. I cannot tell you how high alcoholism is in ADHD, especially in certain cultures. Why? Because that's how they self-medicate. What does booze, what does alcohol do to the central nervous system? It relaxes it. Boom. People with ADHD, we got a heightened central nervous system. We perceive threat and emotions and feel them really intensely. So as soon as you get some alcohol up in the system, yeah, it's going to relax that. So that's dandy and all, but for some people with ADHD, there's impulse problems, and that's where the addiction and alcoholism can unfortunately come in. And if you're not aware that you have ADHD, you might be self-medicating with alcohol. And unfortunately, your liver is really not going to be able to keep up at a certain point in your life, later in your life. I cannot tell you how many funerals I've been to because of people who died from cirrhosis. And I guarantee you, the majority of those people had ADHD too, looking back at it now. So, we need to be careful because of this. If you have a substance abuse problem, or if you have a problem with alcohol, and if you feel it's out of your hands, and you feel like you can't manage it, I urge you to go talk to someone. Go to a detox center, work with a psychiatrist or a counselor. You can do this. So many people have beat addiction. And if you yourself watching this video have an issue with addiction, you can beat it too. Don't doubt yourself. So many people in this world have ADHD and other conditions. We can certainly do our part to improve our life. And we should too. And if you're in a relationship with someone, and if you have a substance abuse problem and you're hiding it from your partner, from your family, because you feel ashamed of it, well, understand that sometimes we need a social support system. We need to go talk to somebody else, whether that be a counselor or a therapist, to get us ready to present that to our family or to our significant other. Some of us might feel really ashamed that we have this problem. We might not want to share it with anybody else. So go talk to somebody about it first. If you feel it's too heavy to talk to your partner about it, or family about it first. And most importantly too is get your addiction, if you have an addiction problem, taken care of. It's a lot easier said than done, but there is treatment for ADHD. And I believe that with medication, a combination of supplements, and with a healthy diet that eliminates a lot of the toxins that ruin your body and brain and that make the ADHD worse, I believe you can turn your life around. I've seen so many people do it. I'm testimony to that. I really didn't believe in myself There came a point in my mid-20s where I was like, this is not going away. I found out what that was inattentive ADHD. I researched it. I got my evaluation, went to a psychiatrist, started taking very low dose stimulant medication. I started taking supplements to fight the oxidation from the medication and to help my neurotransmitters that are low due to the ADHD and turn my life around. And I truly believe you can do that for you too. Perhaps the substances or things you were doing were of help to you at one point when you weren't aware as much of the ADHD. But now that you're more aware of it, I urge you to be open to the idea to self-medicate with treatment that is going to be directed towards the ADHD overall and is not going to give you a risk of cirrhosis later on in your life or a risk of you ODing. We need to be careful and mindful of what we take and what we do. Take it one step at a time. I know it's not easy. Let's go on to the next point. Number 10, neglecting your children / taking out your frustrations. Unfortunately, sometimes when you have ADHD, whether it be you or your partner, we both have it or only one of you has it. Unfortunately, sometimes there are certain types of individuals who are constantly needing to go out and they just want to stimulate the mind and self-medicate, and they're not even sure why, because they might not be aware of the ADHD. And because of this, and because of there being issues of organizing, issues with rejection sensitive dysphoria, some parents are neglectful of their kids and don't really help them out in some areas where they need help, where they're not there for them for different reasons. Maybe perhaps because they're not taking care of themselves. They're not taking care of the ADHD. There might be some emotional, unresolved issues as well. And because of this, sometimes the kids can be neglected. And there's some instances too where the kids become parentified. It's almost like they have to be the parent to their own parents because one or both their parents can't do it. It's quite sad. But we're here. We got to make the best of it. And we have to try to improve our situation. So we got to try to be there for our family members when they need it. And it's tough too, especially if we have resentment and unresolved issues that need to be spoken of. There will be a time and a place for that. That's a step-by-step thing. That's not an all-at-once thing. That's a lot of emotion, believe you me. Take it step by step with that. But try to be there for your kids if you're not, or if you've had a problem with that. I'm not telling you how to live your life or what to do. I'm just telling you to be open to the idea of being there for your kids if you feel like you've been more neglectful. And if you're a parent who takes out your frustrations because of your ADHD, if you're a parent who takes out your frustrations on your kids because of your ADHD, or because of your undiagnosed ADHD, you need to balance yourself out and be considerate. If you didn't know about your ADHD prior and you were frustrated constantly, irritable, in a bad mood, and you took your frustrations out, perhaps not only on your kids, but the rest of your family, perhaps your significant other too, you have some reflecting to do. And if you feel it's really tough, because you're going to feel bad that why did I do that? How could I have done that? Well, let me tell you something. You probably weren't aware of the ADHD and the implications it brought. You weren't taking care of yourself. Most importantly, you weren't at your best. And when we're not at our best, we do some pretty lousy things sometimes. But we need to be okay talking about it. Because if we don't talk about it and have a social support system, it's never going to resolve itself. It's okay. People make mistakes. There's consequences because of those mistakes, of course, but we need to be able to own up sometimes to what we do. I've seen hundreds of people, parents reconcile with their son or their daughter or with themselves. It's possible. We just need to be okay with it, because sometimes it's so tough to remember how negative or intense we were. We don't even want to think about it. Because sometimes it's tough to remember how we were, how we acted, what we did. We feel ashamed. It's like, how could we have done that? When the ADHD isn't taken care of, when you're not aware of the struggle that comes with ADHD, these negative implications have a higher likelihood of happening. But now that you know, now it's time for you to consider doing something about it. If you have problems with this, at this point, talk to your partner about it. If you feel like you've let your son or your daughter down, go talk to him. Go give him a hug. Give him a pat on the back. Do something little by little to show him that, hey, I wasn't aware of what I was doing or the implications. I apologize. I have a certain condition I wasn't really aware of. Those discussions are okay to have. If your family members start saying that you're just using that as an excuse to be a jerk or whatever, it's like, they might not be ready to hear it yet. But that's okay. Not everybody's going to be ready to hear that. And unfortunately, not everyone's going to believe that ADHD is a real thing. So be ready for that too. It takes time. And if it helps out, show them this video. So that way, they can see that's not just you, but many other people with ADHD that struggle with the same thing. Let's be considerate to our kids. Let's try to not take our frustrations on the rest of our family members. I hope that can bring you some insight, and I hope that can help you out. Let's go to the next point. Number 11, the do as I say, not as I do rationalization. I cannot tell you how many times I have been in households of families where one of the parents is really strict with the son or daughter and tells them, you need to do this good in school because I didn't do that good in school when I was younger. So you have to be the one to be the best and to be amazing and to get straight A's or whatever. Unfortunately, that's good and all, but unfortunately, a lot of the time, that's an overreaching sort of ordeal, because I've seen some parents traumatize their kids to have to do amazing in so many areas of their life. And this is unfortunately sometimes the case, that the parent themselves has some unresolved resentment and issues in themselves, sometimes because they themselves have ADHD and couldn't accomplish a lot of things, so they vicariously want to live through their son or their daughter doing those accomplishments. And whether it's not vicariously, they just want to see their kids do better than they do. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. When it becomes a negative thing is when the child feels traumatized and like they can't come home because they feel if the parent sees the grade that is any less than perfect, that they're not going to love them, they're going to threaten them, they might hurt them, they might tell them horrible things. And I've seen parents yell at their kids, telling them, when I was younger, I had so much struggle with this, but not you. You're going to do so much better than I did. And then they just berate them and just keep yelling at them. We have to realize that if both parents in the relationship have ADHD, or if one parent has ADHD, it's a 75% chance the child's going to have ADHD too. And unfortunately, you're trying to force a child to do these accomplishments and things that are so far out of their capacity sometimes, because the ADHD is not being addressed, and most importantly, the ADHD is not being taken care of. And you're creating a lot of wounds and resentment and very difficult scenarios on your son or daughter by doing this. I know that you mean well, but we need to be considerate of this. We need to perhaps see or get an evaluation to see whether ADHD is involved or not. Because this sort of mindset as do as I say, not as I do, what does that mean? The parent can get away with doing a bunch of lousy, messed up stuff, but the child can't? I always thought that was a really unfair notion when I was growing up and when I would see this with people. And this is something I still see with people. We need to be considerate of that. Sometimes as a parent, the same difficulties that we have is the same difficulty that the adolescent and child is going to have too. Just like we wanted, or we would have wished someone to have been considerate of us when we were younger, when we were feeling really bad because we couldn't do certain things. That's what our kids need too. They need that encouragement to do good like you're doing, to pump them up and want them to succeed. But they also need to be nurtured, encouraged, and loved, and shown that, hey, it's okay to mess up sometimes. We're still going to love and care for you. We want to help you out in whatever way you need. Not this, oh, I can't go home to my parents because they're going to kill me if I don't get an A plus exactly, or have a 4.0. You're not doing your son or daughter any favors by doing that. And the sad part is, there's some families where everyone has ADHD in the family, and then they still expect the kid to go and do these things and really go out of their way. They're pushing over their limits. It's something that the ADHD makes so difficult. Yet the parent just keeps being intense and being cold, and just, it can be really damaging to a kid. I know so many youngsters who have had to have gone through that, and it's very unfortunate. So we need to be considerate of that. We need to set a better example. Be, not just a parent, but sometimes also a confidant to our son or daughter, that they can come to us when they have issues, that they don't need to go to somebody else or a stranger, that it's okay to talk to one of their parents about it. It should be okay. You're their parents. The kids are going to be looking up to you for advice and guidance. And if they see that your advice and guidance is lousy, unfortunately, lousy things are going to start happening in their life. So, we need to get the ADHD under control. And we need to learn to be more understanding and encouraging when it's necessary. I hope you can reflect upon that if this is something you struggle with, because it's something that's very important. And the final point, refusing to accept that you, your partner, and or children have ADHD and not doing anything about it. So one thing I've noticed in certain families is that when the diagnosis of ADHD is brought up, or it's recommended for somebody to go get an evaluation, the parents might not be emotionally ready to accept the diagnosis. So they outright deny that ADHD exists. They might insult the person who's recommending that ADHD is a thing, call them crazy, and tell their son or daughter, yeah, that person's nuts. They don't know what they're talking about. You don't have anything. Denying that ADHD is real is basically, you're putting the metaphorical dirt underneath the carpet. You're sweeping the dirt underneath the carpet, so to speak. So ADHD is real. You look at the research. There's tons of research out there, many studies recently in the past. It's a neurological, neurochemistry condition where there's a lot of imbalances in gene mutation. It's not a made-up thing. It's a totally real thing. And unfortunately, some parents sometimes who have sons or daughters that have ADHD, they might feel resentful and might not want to accept the diagnosis because of having ADHD themselves, and because they themselves have rejection sensitive dysphoria, where they feel if they accept the diagnosis, they're going to be letting their kids down, because it's like, how come I couldn't find out earlier? I couldn't be there for them. How bad am I as a parent to not have helped and have gotten diagnosed earlier? Or, unfortunately, comes the shaming and guilt part of it, where it's like, what are people going to say? What are my family members going to say? What is the school, society? And we feel like we're going to be judged. Whatever other people say and do is their business. And what you do and how you conduct yourself and your family and how you go about helping out the ADHD is your business. And none of those other people's business. Because you as a family, as a parent, as an individual, know the struggle that ADHD brings forth. Pleasing other people is not going to help out your ADHD. You got to take care of the ADHD. I have a video, link up above, that is entitled Coming to Terms with ADHD. It's not easy. It's not an easy acceptance. But for some people, it's very reassuring. It's a giant relief, a giant aha moment. It's like it finally makes sense. This is why I've struggled with A, B, C, and so forth all my life. Now I finally know what I can do to get myself some help. But for some people, it's more tougher than that. Is they feel the pressure of, oh, how am I going to be viewed and how am I going to be treated? You're going to have to overlook that. Because you as a person, you as a family matter. It should be open to discussion. I recommend to go talk to your doctor and then ask for a recommendation to go see a psychiatrist. Ask for a referral to go see a psychiatrist. That way you can get your evaluation and find a treatment that works for you. Because it totally is possible. But I know coming to terms with ADHD is not an easy thing. There's so much shame. There's a lot of rejection sensitive dysphoria. And it's like, oh, what am I going to do? Where do I start? How do I know what to take? How do I fight off the side effects of medication? I got videos on supplements and how to fight off side effects as well. I went through this whole same ordeal of researching ADHD. What does it do? What can I do? I hyper-focused on that for years, and I'm still hyper-focusing. I love researching ADHD, and it's a population that I want to work with. So, take initiative. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for your family. And if you don't want to make this public to your other family members, you don't have to. Keep this to yourself. And then when you're ready to discuss it, discuss it. And if they don't believe them, screw them. At least you got the ADHD and you're taking care of it and your life quality improves. At least in that sense, you're taking care of your ADHD and your life quality improves. Because at the end of the day, taking care of your ADHD is what matters, not what other people say. So, take initiative. Stand up for yourself and stand up for your family. Take care of the ADHD. Anyways, folks, those were all 12 points. Quite a lengthy video, but I hope you learned something. I hope you and your family, you and your partner can get the help that they need. You guys can improve your quality of life and get that ADHD under control. I wish you all the best. Best regards. It's your ADHD comrade, Wilhelm. Over and